Welcome, distinguished panel, to a discussion veiled in mystery and tragedy, the disappearance of the Eilean Mor Lighthouse Keepers in December 1900, a case that has puzzled many, but today we aim to unravel it with our combined wits and wisdom.
Indeed, a curious case of vanishing men in a lighthouse. The isolation and circumstances present an intriguing puzzle. Analyzing the evidence without the mist of speculation will be elementary.
An intriguing premise, Mr. Holmes, but we must consider the human element. The psychology of the keepers could provide us with the missing pieces of this puzzle. Intellectual rigor is essential.
Oh, I do agree, Mr. Dupin. Sometimes the most baffling mysteries are solved not by examining what is there, but understanding what is not. The human mind often conceals more than it reveals.
Let's not dance around the maypole here. Isolation, the sea's wrath, or foul play. We need to dig into the nooks and crannies, scrutinize the facts, and maybe get our hands dirty.
Facts, Sam? In a case shrouded in mystery like fog over the highlands, we'll need to peel back the layers of this onion without crying over it. Let skepticism be our guide. A task most delicate and demanding. We shall examine timelines, psychological undercurrents, physical evidence, meteorological reports, and even the realm of local legends, all to form a coherent picture of the events leading to the keeper's disappearance.
A meticulous approach, as expected, Hercule. However, let us not dawdle on the periphery. The smallest detail may hold the key to unlocking this enigma.
Precisely, Sherlock. A methodical dissection of events, actions, and anomalies will illuminate the dark corners of this case. Let us proceed with analytical precision.
We must also remember, gentlemen, that at the heart of this mystery are three men who vanished. Their stories, their fears, their hopes, they are paramount to understanding what transpired.
Stories have a way of getting twisted. I'm here to cut through the balderdash and get to the meat of the matter. No ghosts, no curses, just good, old-fashioned detective work.
Ghosts and curses, eh? This isn't a penny dreadful, Sam. We're here to sift through the evidence, challenge narratives, and maybe, just maybe, unearth the truth. With that spirit of inquiry, let us delve into our investigation. Each viewpoint, each deduction, brings us closer to understanding. Our path is set. Let us begin. Let us commence with the timeline leading to the mysterious absence of the Eilean Mor Lighthouse Keepers. Auguste, your keen, analytical mind is well suited to initiate our discussion.
Indeed, Hercule. The sequence of events as recorded hints at a meticulously orderly life up until the point of vanishing. My scrutiny begins on December 15th, the last recorded day the keepers were seen from the mainland. Each subsequent absence was a silent testament to the ensuing enigma.
Dame Auguste, relying solely on recorded events, is asking to be misled. Documents are as reliable as the men who pen them, prone to omission, whether by folly or deceit.
Mr. Marlowe, skepticism serves us well, yet dismissing recorded evidence offhandedly is equally perilous. Method dictates that we explore every avenue, including the reliability of said timelines.
If I may intercede, critical to our understanding is the nature of entries preceding the disappearance. Subtle shifts in routine or mood could prove insightful. Have we overlooked nuances that, to an untrained eye, may appear mundane?
Wise, Mr. Holmes. It's often in the minutiae that truths are hidden. Psychological strain, even slight, might be discernible. Were they merely performing their duties, or was there an undercurrent of apprehension, possibly fear?
Folks don't just up and vanish into the blue because they got a bit of the jitters. There's more, something tangible that spooked or took them. Psychological analyses are well and good, but feet don't float off cliffs by their own volition.
Mr. Spade, your point is taken, yet dismissing the internal strife that isolation can provoke is to ignore a key piece of the puzzle. The human mind can be its own peril, capable of leading one into the very danger they seek to avoid.
Let's not dance around. The last known facts before they vanished into thin air. Examining these without preconceived notions is our beginning. Throw me timelines and psychological conjectures all you want, but it's the tangible evidence at the time that draws a starting line. Precisons, gentlemen and lady, that our aim is to dissect these initial findings with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. The timeline, crucial. The psychological state, illuminating. Both are pieces of a larger, more complex puzzle. Let us proceed with diligence and, above all, an open mind. We commence our dissection with an examination of the last logbook entries. Sherlock, your perspicacity with such documents precedes you. What insight do you gather?
Indeed, the devil's in the details, as they say. The entries are punctuated with mentions of severe weather, yet the absence of any distress signal is puzzling. An entry alluding to storms, severe winds, the atmosphere must have been charged, physically and psychologically. Not explicit in distress, yet cryptic in its normalcy amidst chaos.
Oh, I do find that fascinating, Sherlock. People often reveal more than they intend in their writing. A mention of calm and stormy weather might equally allude to their internal states as to the climate. Desolation and isolation take a toll on the sturdiest of souls.
Words in a logbook ain't just simple observations. They're a window to the keeper's minds. If you ask me, it smells of men trying to keep a record in the face of something unexplainable. They were clutching at the normalcy, their log, their only anchor.
Precisely, Philip. Yet we must not leap to conclusions without thorough analysis. The specific diction employed, the meticulous nature of their entries, even under distress, suggest a disciplined mind. Were these mere observations or a coded cry for help, esoteric in nature, decipherable only to those who know where to look?
You're all dancing around the elephant in the room. Code or no code, disciplined or not, something scared them enough to disrupt their final entries. Doesn't take a detective to see that. What were they omitting? Fear does funny things to folks.
Your point is taken, Sam, however. Speculation without data is like shooting in the dark. The psychological state inferred from the log must be contextualized with their expected behavior. These men were seasoned keepers, not easily rattled. This points to an extraordinary event or cumulative strain affecting their psyche.
Indeed, Sherlock. It's the undercurrents we must attune ourselves to. Their words, possibly mundane on the surface, might well be rich with subtext. Did no one else find the abrupt cessation of entries troubling? As if something or someone prevented their continuation.
Trouble or not, we can agree something turned their routine sideways. Whether it came from the sea, from the skies, or from the mind, it's the heart of this mystery. Let's not forget, optimism and routine are sometimes the last refuge of the desperate. A point well constructed by all. The logbook entries, while seemingly mundane, harbor under their facade a tempest of possible meanings and implications. Our task is to sift through these veiled messages, employing deduction and intuition to reveal the hidden truths. Our exploration must now proceed to the nature of their environment and its possible contribution to this baffling enigma. Let us consider, mes amis, the scene of an unfinished meal and overturned chairs. This visual tableau, is it the result of a terrestrial squabble or something precipitated by an urgent external menace?
I'll bite. That scene reeks of a tiff gone south, see? Cooped up in a tin can with the same mugs day in, day out. It's no picnic. Tempers flare, words are exchanged, maybe a fist or two. Normal human boiling points.
That's an easy trail to follow, but consider this. No signs of a brawl, no blood, no nothing. These are seasoned keepers, not greenhorns. Overturned chairs? Could be a red herring, a staged scene for those who come looking.
Intriguing, but allow logic to illuminate the path. The urgency implied by an unfinished meal suggests an interruption, a sudden and overpowering necessity to abandon the hearth. External, not internal conflict holds the key.
Elementary, my associates. The absence of struggle within the lighthouse itself hints at an external stimulus powerful enough to command immediate attention. Be it a signal, a sound, or a sight off the coast, it necessitated instant action.
Oh, gentlemen, you do have a knack for the dramatic, but let us not overlook the simpler, psychological explanation. An unfinished meal, a sudden departure, yes, but perhaps born of fear or a compulsion rather than physical altercation.
Fear? Now that's interesting. But fear of what? The sea's been their bread and butter. Wouldn't take a seasoned sailor to get spooked, unless
Unless it wasn't the sea itself, but what it threatened to bring to their doorstep. A rogue wave, perhaps, or an unscheduled visitor. The sea keeps its secrets, but so do men.
Consider then, if we are to follow this thread, the possibility of being summoned. Not by the aforementioned rogue wave, but by something requiring immediate attention, an eventuality planned for but hoped against.
Summons or not, the logical deduction aligns thus. Swift action was imperative. Whether fleeing an internal threat or responding to an external one, the keepers left in haste. The question remains, what were they moving towards or running from?
Indeed, it appears we have before us a riddle wrapped within an enigma: the chairs, the meal, the sudden disappearance. Each clue must be meticulously examined in the illumination of both logic and intuition. Let us scrutinize the physical state of the lighthouse and its immediate vicinity for any indicium of strife or external interference. Monsieur Philip, please commence with your observations. You're barking up the wrong tree if you're looking for a clear-cut struggle. No signs of forced entry, no blood. But the devil's in the details. The entire scene's too clean, too orderly. It's as if someone wiped it down, erased their tracks. That speaks louder than disarray.
Intriguing, yet an absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The meticulous nature of the scene suggests a hasty departure rather than a calculated cleanup. One must consider the possibility that the keepers left of their own volition, or were compelled to leave abruptly by an unseen menace.
But therein lies the rub. An external threat of sufficient menace to provoke such a response would surely have left some trace upon the land, the structure, or within the diaries of the men themselves. We are dealing with something far more insidious, or perhaps tragically mundane.
Gentlemen, might I suggest we're overlooking the simplest explanation? The absence of struggle within the lighthouse could merely indicate that whatever befell these poor souls occurred outside its confines. The sea, after all, does not leave a calling card.
And what's your take, lady? They just strolled into the sea? There's a difference between being open-minded and having your brains fall out. No, if there was no tussle inside, it means the action was elsewhere. Could be they saw something worth abandoning their posts for.
Seeing something, eh? That's assuming a lot based on nothing. No witness, no evidence, it's just chasing shadows. We're dealing with men who vanished into thin air. Whatever spooked them, if something did, it didn't leave a trace for us gumshoes to find.
Precisely the point, Mr. Marlowe. The lack of disturbance may itself be the clue. Their departure was either extremely urgent or orchestrated to seem voluntary. We must consider all possibilities, including those that push the boundaries of our conventional understanding.
As always, we return to the need for deeper analysis. The nature of their exit, seemingly without struggle, points us towards the psychological rather than the physical. Perhaps it was not what was physically present that instigated their departure, but the anticipation or fear of what could come.
A poignant observation, Monsieur Dupin. Fear, anticipation, the unseen and the unknown. These are forces powerful enough to compel action, perhaps even irrational action. It behooves us to not only consider the tangible but the psychological landscape these keepers were navigating.
Indeed, Hercule, fear can be as real a barrier or motivator as iron bars or a storm, and the human mind, when isolated, can create fears more tangible and immediate than any physical threat. It is perhaps in the minds of the keepers themselves where our answers lie, shrouded in the mist of their final thoughts.
Let us pivot to the role of extreme weather on the day our keepers vanished. Historical reports suggest a fierce storm, yet some say tales of the weather have been exaggerated. Sherlock, your thoughts?
The meteorological data from the period is, at best, rudimentary. Yet, by analyzing prevailing weather patterns, one could theorize the occurrence of a rogue wave or a sudden gale. Such natural phenomena, while rare, are not beyond the realm of possibility and could indeed contribute to an unfortunate series of events leading to their disappearance.
Indeed, Sherlock, but let's not forget human nature in the midst of this. A storm might whip up not just the sea but the men's fears. Imaginations run wild in isolated confines. Could they have made a perilous decision in a moment of panic?
Storm or no storm, it doesn't add up. A rogue wave that leaves the rest of the island untouched? Convenient. There's more here. They were lighthouse keepers, trained for rough weather. No, this smells of human foul play or a desperate flight from something or someone.
Sam's got a point. These men were seasoned, not greenhorns. But say there was a storm, the evidence of its aftermath should have been unmistakable, unless, of course, someone cleaned up the scene, which begs the question, why?
We must consider the psychological impact of an impending storm. Men confined, isolated, with a tempest brewing. It is not just a physical threat, but a psychological crescendo. Could the fear of what was coming, or perceived to come, have driven them to an irrational act?
Astute observations, all. Yet, we must tread carefully between the chasm of hard evidence and the abyss of speculation. Philip, you mentioned the aftermath. Could the absence of expected debris be itself a clue, or are we chasing shadows? Chasing shadows or not, it's all we've got. If the storm was as bad as they say, where's the damage? Where's the chaos left in its wake? It's too clean, too neat. Something ain't right.
Philip, while I understand your skepticism, it's essential to recognize the unpredictable nature of sea storms. Anomalies do occur, yet the absence of chaos does indeed raise peculiar questions. Was it merely the sea's temper, or something more sinister at play?
Perhaps the key does lie in what is missing, rather than what is found. A storm, a rogue wave, it might cloud the issue, providing the perfect cover for more terrestrial concerns.
Cover-ups, fear, nature's fury, they all make for a fine tale. But let's not lose sight of the men, the human element in this. Whether it was nature's wrath or man's folly, it's a grim end that met them.
Indeed, the human element remains at the heart of our discussion. It is this we must continue to explore, utilizing both the evidence presented by nature and the deductions we can draw from their known actions and psychologies. Let us proceed with this dual approach as our guiding principle. Let us now scrutinize the geographical aspects of Eilean Mor and the peril it may have posed. The cliffs, the sea, a setting of natural dangers, n'est-ce pas?
Indeed, the isolation of the isle itself is a clue. A rugged terrain not just shapes the body, but the mind. One cannot overlook the environment's role in this mystery.
And let's not dance around the fact that accidents on these cliffs could have easily been the endgame. No foul play, just man versus nature.
That's an oversimplification, and you know it, Sam. Accident or not, it's the details that count. The island's not just a backdrop, it's a key player. Think about it. No sign of them anywhere. It's as if the sea swallowed them whole.
Exactly, Philip. The sea gives and the sea takes away, but we're not dealing with an event in a vacuum. One has to consider the emotional state these surroundings fostered in our poor keepers.
Observations of the island's features and documented accidents elsewhere suggest an interface of human error and environmental inevitability. We must dissect these components scientifically.
Error indeed, Auguste, but was it pure accident? A slip, a fall, perhaps? Yet one or three? The odds of all succumbing to the same fate stretch the bounds of probability.
Stretch or not, stranger things have happened. Put 3 men on a rock in the middle of nowhere, stir in some bad weather, and you're brewing a tragedy.
Sam raises a crude but valid point. The tempestuous relationship between man and the elements cannot be underestimated.
And let us not forget the human heart in conflict with itself. Desperation or panic could have led one to fall, with the others attempting a rescue.
But therein lies the rub. Assuming one goes over and another tries to help, what of the third? It's a bit too tidy, everything hinging on a sequential disaster.
True, Philip. One must apply Occam's razor, yet balance it against the irregularities of human behavior under stress. The island's geography is but a stage for a broader play of human psychology and natural forces.
Correct, Auguste. Yet, even if we accept the premise of accidental death by natural forces, the mystery persists in its particulars. The absence of bodies, the unanswered questions. They allude to a puzzle incomplete.
Indeed, mes amis, the island provides a stage, but the actors' scripts remain unfound. We must continue to piece together this enigma, bearing in mind the potent mixture of human frailty and nature's unforgiving power. Let us explore the psychological undertow that possibly factored into our lighthouse keeper's disappearance. The isolation at Eilean Mor, is it a catalyst for their ultimate fate? Auguste, your thoughts commence our discussion, s'il vous plaît.
Isolation, indeed, distills the essence of a person's psyche to its rawest form. In the case of Eilean Mor, one must consider the acute effects of such solitude on the mind. It is not merely the physical separation from society, but the existential detachment it engenders. This could certainly exacerbate any latent paranoia or mental strain, potentially leading to irrational decisions.
While I concur with Auguste on the potential for isolation to fray the nerves, I posit we mustn't overlook human intuition and emotional complexity. These men weren't unacquainted with solitude. Their chosen profession attests to a certain resilience. Perhaps a breakdown of camaraderie or internal divisions wrought by the strain of isolation could have led to tragedy.
It's elementary to consider psychological strain in circumstances such as these, but let's not leap to conclusions without tangible evidence. The human mind is indeed fallible, but it also possesses a remarkable ability to adapt to environments. What we need is a careful consideration of behavioral evidence left behind. Did isolation lead to an error in judgment or a mishap that spelled their doom?
Both of you skirt around the edges, Auguste with his philosophical musings and Sherlock with his call for evidence. The blunt truth is, isolation or not, men don't just vanish into the ether. Mental strain could lead to disarray, sure, but to suggest it as the primary catalyst is to ignore the darker corners of human nature and the desperation it brings.
Psychology's a fancy angle, but we're overlooking the basic instinct to survive. If you're pinned against the wall, isolated, and your mind starts playing tricks on you, what do? You fight or you flight. Maybe these keepers saw something, real or imagined, and it triggered a survival response. Could be as simple as that. They ran from whatever ghosts their minds concocted.
A survival response? A fascinating proposition, yet we're in the realm of speculation without solid grounding. The psychological state of these men is a puzzle piece, yes, but without understanding the picture it belongs to, we're left grasping at shadows.
Speculation it may be, but let's not dismiss the influence of the human psyche. Fear, isolation, the unknowable, it can drive one to extremes. We must consider all facets, not dismiss them out of hand.
Your insights bring depth to our understanding, but it seems we are circling the core issue without landing. The effects of isolation are myriad and complex, yet without conclusive evidence, they serve to expand possibilities rather than narrow them. It is a thread we cannot ignore, yet it leaves us no closer to unraveling this enigma. Let us venture into the dark waters of historical piracy and smuggling in the vicinity of the Eilean Mor. Philip, your cynicism may shed light where others see shadows. What say you on the likelihood of foul play by smugglers or pirates? Foul play? Sure, as the night is dark. This area has been ripe with the underbelly of society's miscreants for centuries. Pirates, smugglers, you name it. But here's the rub. To pin a disappearance on such gentry without a shred of physical evidence, it's a stretch even for me.
But consider the intellectual exercise, Monsieur Marlowe. If we juxtapose the known history of maritime crimes in this region with the unexplained vanishing of the keepers, a pattern begins to emerge, does it not? It is not outside the realm of possibility that these men became inadvertent obstacles to a clandestine operation.
Inadvertent obstacles. Nice phrase. Means they got in the way of someone with less to lose. But Auguste's got a point. It's not all about what's there. Sometimes it's about what's missing. Maybe these guys stumbled onto something meant to stay hidden. It wouldn't be the first time silence was bought with lives.
Gentlemen, your flights of speculation, though entertaining, must be grounded in deductive reasoning. To assert the involvement of pirates or smugglers requires evidence, not just the absence of a better explanation. Historical context, while valuable, does not constitute proof.
With respect, Mr. Holmes, sometimes it's the small observations that reveal the most. A missing item here, an unlocked door there. It's not about grand theories, but about understanding human nature. Perhaps these smugglers are more than a mere historical footnote and indeed play a role in our mystery.
And yet we are detectives, not novelists. Our speculations must be rooted in fact. Monsieur Dupin, you speak of patterns. But what of the law? Was there not a presence on these isles, a watchful eye that would note the comings and goings of such notorious figures?
Indeed, Hercule, and therein lies a significant piece of the puzzle. The absence of evidence in this case does not necessarily indicate evidence of absence. Unrecorded does not mean unobserved. We must consider the capabilities of law enforcement at the time, which were undoubtedly less sophisticated than today.
Less sophisticated or just turned a blind eye? There's a difference between can't see and won't see. The line between the law and those outside it was blurrier back then, especially in remote places like the Flannan Isles.
And where does that leave us? Chasing ghosts through history. There's a saying where I come from, dead men tell no tales. But maybe in this case, the silence is screaming.
A poetic notion, Mr. Spade, but it is the evidence that must speak, and speak it has not. Until it does, we must reserve judgment and keep our theories within the realm of the plausible.
A spirited debate, indeed. It appears that while the specter of historical piracy and smuggling looms large, we are yet to anchor it firmly to the fate of our lighthouse keepers. Let us proceed, with this caution in mind, as we navigate the treacherous waters of speculation and deduction. Gentlemen and Madam Marple, we now approach the segment that invites controversy, the supernatural speculations historically associated with the Flannan Isles. A matter, I must say, quite fitting for detective minds such as ours.
Let us not waste our intellect on such fancies. The supernatural, if it implies abandoning logic, has no place in serious investigation. The occurrences on Eilean Mor can, and indeed must, be explained within the bounds of rational thought.
But dismissing the lore outright might be closing our eyes to how it shapes perceptions. Don't tell me you never chased a ghost, Holmes, only to find a man in a mask?
There's the rub, though. It's not the specters causing the ruckus, it's the belief in them. Frightened minds can turn shadows into specters, silence into whispers. But actual ghosts? That's a mug's game.
Indeed, Mr. Marlowe, the human psyche is easily influenced by its surroundings and tales told by the fireside. Fear can drive men to madness, and isolation only sharpens the blade. But let us not confuse cause with effect. The lore may exacerbate fear, yet it is not the architect of their physical disappearance.
On the contrary, to dismiss the influence of the local legends is to overlook a critical component of the psychological landscape these men navigated daily. How many decisions, I wonder, were colored by the specter of lore hanging over their heads?
Decisions, perhaps, but not physical events. An interesting angle on the psychological Dupin, but one that ultimately circles back to earthly matters. The law can influence thought, but thoughts do not overturn chairs or extinguish lights.
You're a perspicacious one, Holmes, but thinking every mystery's got a man in a mask behind it is like ignoring the elephant in the room because it's wearing a hat. Sometimes the hat's just a hat. Or in our case, the legend's just a tale.
Sam's got a point. We're dealing with men, not phantoms. Men eat, breathe, and yes, fear. But it's that fear we should be focusing on. What real, palpable thing ignited it? That's our quarry. A spirited debate, mes amis. It is clear that while we entertain the legends and understand their psychological impact, we remain steadfast in our pursuit of tangible evidence. The supernatural serves as a backdrop, a cultural tapestry, but it does not hold the needle that threads the truth of this mystery.
Precisely, Mr. Poirot. It is within the realms of the explainable that we must search for our answers. The supernatural, while fascinating, does not offer us the keys to this particular lock.
Let us proceed to uncover the heart of this enigma. Philip, your deductions often pierce the veil of the most opaque mysteries. What say you? The key here isn't just in what we see, it's in the shadows, what we're not seeing. These men didn't just vanish into thin air. An accident? Maybe. But my gut tells me there's something we're missing, a piece everyone's overlooked because it's too plain in sight.
And therein lies the flaw of relying solely on gut instincts. We must consider the evidence. The log entries, the state of the lighthouse, the external conditions, all suggest a sudden, perhaps forced departure. Yet there's no evidence of another party involved, no signs of a struggle, no footprints leading away into oblivion.
You're both dancing around the biggest elephant in the room. Isolation and the human mind's fragility. These men were cut off, stewing in their own juice long enough. Minds can turn dark. Desperation does funny things to people.
Quite so, Sam. However, One must not hastily conclude that desperation leads to lunacy without considering all variables. Human nature is remarkably resilient, yet unfathomably complex. While isolation can indeed strain the psyche, it is the interplay of individual fears, secrets, and perhaps unresolved conflicts amongst the men themselves that likely unraveled this mystery.
Fascinating, but allow us to not dismiss the potency of fear, both rational and irrational. The fear that creeps into one's mind can be as real as the ground underfoot. Could they have been terrorized not by flesh and blood, but by their own imaginations fueled by folklore and the oppressive isolation? Indeed, a scenario worth contemplating.
All right, let's say for a moment we entertain the idea of fear, mortal or not. It still doesn't cart off three grown men into the ether. There's a physicality missing from this equation, a mechanism of disappearance.
Which brings us back to the natural elements of Eilean Mor. A rogue wave, an unexpected storm, a natural disaster could easily sweep away any evidence of their existence, rendering the physicality you seek, Phillip, moot.
I must interject. We have ventured into the realm of speculation, bridging facts with theories. It is a delicate balance, one that necessitates a meticulous approach. The psychological, the natural, the possible external threat all form potential facets of this tragedy. Yet we must converge upon a plausible explanation that pays heed to the known facts.
And while we're all trying to sound like the smartest guy in the room, let's not forget, sometimes it's the simple answers that make the most sense. An accident brought on by extreme weather, or something personal and desperate spilling over in that isolation. Not as thrilling as pirates or ghosts, but more likely than not.
Dear Sam, sometimes it is the simplest explanations that elude us precisely because we search for complexity and mystery. Yet the truth often resides in the quiet corners of the mundane.
As we have faithfully explored these avenues, it seems we are at a crossroad of theories. Yet, in combining the strands of our debate, we find ourselves leaning towards a narrative that marries the sudden force of nature with the fragile state of human psychology amidst stark isolation. It appears, my friends, that while we may never unravel every thread of this mystery, we have perhaps shaded in the contours of the most likely scenarios. The curtain draws near on our discussion, mes amis, but let us not depart without imprinting our final thoughts upon this enigmatic case. Sherlock, your deductions have often illuminated the darkest of mysteries. Pray, share your concluding insight.
Indeed, Hercule. The evidence, or the conspicuous lack thereof, suggests to me a tragedy sculpted by human error amidst nature's fury. To consign it to the realms of the supernatural is to admit defeat in the face of the unknown. We must seek logical explanations, and in this case, the ferocity of the sea and the desolation of Eilean Mor whisper the most about the keeper's fate.
Sherlock, dear, your logic is sound, yet one cannot dismiss the human element so readily. Isolation breeds not just madness, but vulnerability. Perhaps what transpired was a confluence of the mind's fragility and nature's wrath, and sometimes it's the overlooked trifles that tell the most poignant tales.
But we mustn't overlook the significance of environmental and psychological pressures combined. These men were not merely keepers of the light. They were prisoners to their own seclusion. It is within this crucible of isolation that the human psyche can indeed fracture, leading to catastrophic outcomes.
You folks are dancing around the fire without getting burnt. The answers aren't in the footprints left behind, but in the muddy chaos they represent. In my experience, folks don't just vanish into thin air. There's always a play, a motive. But here, the isolation plays a maddening tune, one likely to lead a man to dance off the edge if pushed by the right gust of wind or a moment of despair.
And yet, we've sat here, spinning our wheels in the muck of possibilities. Nature, isolation, the human condition, we're knee-deep in it. But we're missing the point. Without concrete evidence, our theories hold as much water as a sieve. It's a bitter pill, but sometimes the truth remains shrouded in the fog, unreachable, lost to the sea and the sands of time. A compelling tapestry of theories we have woven today. Yet as much as we've unraveled, the absolute truth eludes our grasp. This mystery, like many others, serves as a humbling reminder of the complexities of our world and the limits of our understanding. Our efforts underscore not our failure to pinpoint a singular truth, but rather the relentless pursuit of knowledge and the acceptance that some answers may forever dance just beyond the reach of our lantern's light. Merci, mes amis, for your insights. May we never lose our fervor for uncovering the truths hidden in the shadows of the unknown.